meth lab and played bingo.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and we're live at somethingtowrestle.com. And every now and again, we go live a little early, thanks to our friend behind the camera, Mr. Dave Silva.
John, that's right. We're about to ship Dave Silva to Oklahoma. Let him build a meth lab and play bingo with all the Briscoes.
You know, usually on this program, when someone busts Silva's balls about saying they're going to send him back over the border, they don't mean the Texas-Oklahoma border. I love that you've taken it the next step. No, we're talking about the Oklahoma border. So
absolutely. We have no problem with the people south of us. We used to be part of the same country. It's them idiots to the north. There's no cars in Oklahoma because once anybody gets a car, they leave.
What keeps Texas from just floating off into the Gulf of Mexico?
Because Oklahoma sucks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly that is a scientific fact.
Well, there you go.
It's been proven. It's a scientific fact.
It's also a scientific fact that Wrestlemania is this weekend. We are home stretching it for Wrestlemania. I can't believe this is real, but we're just days away from night 1 and night 2. And I got to say, it doesn't exactly feel like Wrestlemania season. And I just mean in terms of it being a little later. Is your internal clock off a little bit too about Wrestlemania this year?
Way off. You know, it's already getting into spring, and normally, you know, the first kind of decent days. I remember when we were in the Meadowlands, I think it was the Meadowlands, you know, Vince had the greatest luck ever. I mean, ever. We would always say, oh, it's not going to rain. It was quit raining right before showtime. And it did every time we were outdoors anywhere. It just, the sun would come out, and it's like Vince had a pact either with the guy up there or with the guy down there. Not sure which one, but he had a pact.
Well, we're going to be talking about the WrestleMania card this weekend. Of course, everybody in and outside of the wrestling bubble is talking about WrestleMania. You know, John, you've told some stories here on the program before, being around some financial bigwigs and things like that outside of our normal wrestling bubble, if you will. How do you think WrestleMania is regarded by people, we'll call it outside of the bubble?
I think it's remarkably regarded the same as you would regard any type of big sporting event, a Super Bowl, a World Series, maybe not World Series because you don't know where Game 7 is going to be, but an NCAA final, the Sweet 16. I mean, all this stuff that happens, and now WrestleMania is one of the biggest. I mean, it's as big as the Super Bowl. They're now getting appearance fees to come to places. That's unheard of. You know, so in Indianapolis or Vegas, cities are actually bidding and offering to pay for WWE to come there, not just come there and get a better deal on the arena. It's a remarkable transition from what it was 30 years ago when I first got there.
It's interesting too, especially when you see mainstream celebrities who might not normally be involved in the wrestling space. It feels like they're always interested in WrestleMania. Just over the weekend, we heard a quote from Tom Brady that was on Fox News that says, "I may be there." This is Tom talking about WrestleMania. It's amazing what's going on there and amazing what's happening with WWE and all the different things surrounding that. We know he's part of the ownership group for the stadium in Las Vegas, and he's obviously a part of the Raiders group. So it's not a surprise that he would be there. But I don't think until I saw that report, it even crossed my mind that Tom Brady's going to WrestleMania. That's kind of a big deal, John.
That's a huge deal. You know, there's been several times in wrestling history that wrestling has become really mainstream. You know, the late 30s with Jim Londos, the 50s, the early 50s with Gorgeous George. Then, of course, the Hulkamania area. Then when Steve and Rock got hot. And then it's kind of gotten, you know, gone along, and all of a sudden it's exploded again. I think it's bigger now than it's ever been. But there's always been times where wrestling has kind of been accepted, and because it was so big, people chose to go there to further their name. But now wrestling doesn't have any of that baggage that it carried, you know, 30, 40 years ago, or at least it doesn't seem to me. People just love the sport, the entertainment, whatever you want to call it.
I do want to ask you about some of the press that we've seen. It feels like everybody and their brother is doing some press regarding WWE. It's all hands on deck. This is clearly their biggest promotional effort of the year. But we've seen more mainstream appearances from Triple H than I maybe imagined. I know last week he was on with Jimmy Fallon. I've seen him making a lot of podcast appearances. I saw clips on YouTube. I guess he was on Andrew Schultz's podcast. And I wanted to know, do you think that is a necessary step for WWE? You know, let's not forget that it was really the beginning of last year that it became official. Vince McMahon is gone, and he probably ain't ever coming back. Do you think that you do need a guy like Triple H sort of out front as the face of WWE in a similar way that Dana White is that for the UFC?
Well, he didn't want Vince as the face. You saw what happened with, was it Bob Costas that he slapped the stuff out of his hand?
Yes, it was.
So you never knew what was going to happen with Vince. He could be very volatile, and he did not suffer fools. If somebody said something he didn't like, he would. That was just beyond him. He'd rather be working. Vince didn't want to do that. I don't know if he didn't see the value or if he just thought he'd rather be working. But, Vince came from such an old school that when you go in front of a reporter, you really were guarded that they were going to take some type of veiled shot at you, and you were waiting for it. I mean, you literally every single time you go out there, go, okay, let's see how they're going to try to get us this time. It was that bad, or at least that was our mindset. It's different now. I watched some of these Triple H interviews. He's fantastic. He is such a good interview. He does the rare thing that people do in interviews. He listens, and he actually answers questions, and his questions change depending upon the question asked, which it shows really he's a very smart guy. Obviously, I think he's brilliant in what he's done. But there wasn't that option before, and we do have that option now. You've got a guy that's running everything there that can actually get in front of the microphone, and not that Vince couldn't. Vince would have been a great interview. He just didn't want to do it. But Triple H, fortunately, does, and I think it's a huge help to WWE.
We are live.
It's great to have a representative like Hunter out there in front of people, and he is so freaking smart. Those when you're interviewing a guy, you know this, Connor. You've interviewed a lot of people. You can tell when a guy can hold his own, and you can tell when a guy is very smart, and you can tell when you're just going to have to lead him and kind of take care of him. Interviewers can tell, especially the smarter ones. They can tell that this guy's can stand on his own, and is a very smart guy. That is a good representative of WWE.
I can't disagree. I think he's done a fabulous job, and I really enjoyed that he's peeling back the curtain on some things that the diehards would be interested in. He recently talked about conversations he had with CM Punk, and we all know that the trouble they had more than a decade ago, but he revealed how we got on the same page to get Punk back into WWE, and I thought that was an interesting conversation. So be sure to check.
And I'm mixed on this. I'm sorry to cut you off, Connor, but I'm mixed on this. And I'd like to ask you as well what you think, because I don't know the answer. I remember when they did the curtain call, I held back. And a lot of guys were very mad about it. I held back. So I don't know if it's bad or not. We'll see next time we go to the Garden if the crowd is bigger. And it was. And Hunter famously told Vince, hey, that was the biggest pop of the night. And Vince said, I'm not ready to get there yet. We may one day. This is all according to Hunter telling the story. And I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer if saying I gave the creative to John Cena to be a heel, and he said, I love it. I don't know if, I'm such from the old school that it does bother me some, but I've also seen so much that I know enough to be open to it that maybe this is what's best. I don't know what's best. What do you think?
I think we're treating wrestling more and more like acting. I think, in my world for the last few weeks, everybody's been talking about the HBO series White Lotus, and it was water cooler talk. And I think WrestleMania, what they're hoping for is to make it water cooler talk. And I think if you were to sort of keep up appearances for what is now basically a Netflix program and say, I don't know, man, Squid Games was real. And today, let's welcome the old man. Tell us how you survive. Or, that to me, it's like, okay, if we're going to pull the curtain back and we're going to say we're entertainment and we're on Netflix, and it feels to me like we're embracing the Hollywood element more than ever is what I'm trying to say.
I think we are, and I have no issue with that. I don't. They're drawing massive crowds and they're doing big money, so they're doing everything right. I'm not disagreeing with anything that they're doing. It's just I'm very open to. I'm not sure which way is best here, and I still think it lends itself to a guy like Brock Lesnar who doesn't do interviews and does have a mystique about like, hey, is this guy gonna? They famously, as they say, go off script. Which kind of puts the mystique back in it as well, even when you're unveiling so much. I think there still is that certain characters there that can transcend that genre of kayfabe by staying in character on social media, by staying in character on interviews, not doing interviews necessarily, and staying in character on television. I think you still have that possibility.
I find it interesting that as we're talking about, revealing too much and pulling back the curtain, just last Monday, you and I were live here on YouTube talking about what happened the prior Friday night on SmackDown between Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair. And we were all wondering, where does the truth end and where does the story begin? and what's real and what's not. And then we saw a parking lot brawl just before SmackDown went on the air this past Friday. It was captured and uploaded to the internet by fans. And then, of course, we saw later on in the SmackDown program, here comes Charlotte Flair, after seemingly being removed from the building in street clothes, attacking Tiffany Stratton. In an era where we're saying, well, I don't like that we're revealing too much. Is this a worked shoot? Is it a shoot that became a work that was always a work? I mean, that's the magic of wrestling, is it not, John? I mean, we're all wondering what's real, what really happened. And I think that's a great example of how you can still do it today. You just have to take the next step.
That's right. You still can. And I think it's probably a shoot that turns into a work, or at least a partial shoot that turns into a full work or something to that effect. Same thing happened with Cody. He's supposed to, point to one person. He points to Roman instead, and so these things happen, and they've happened all throughout our business. And, people going off script said, for one, we used to not have scripts. I understand that. Different generation. I get it. Okay. But when we got scripts, people still would go off of them. And sometimes that turns into magic. Austin 316 wasn't a scripted phrase.
That's
biggest selling phrase in the history of freaking wrestling. We went from not selling any tickets to selling out every building you put Steve Austin's name on during that time. And that was completely off script, as they would say. It was Michael Hayes saying, hey, by the way, Steve, Jake cut a religious promo on you. You might be thinking about that for your promo afterwards. And all of a sudden, Steve comes up with Austin 316, and it made us all wealthy. So sometimes going off script's not necessarily a bad thing. And all these snowflakes out there, they're going, oh, they went off script, they should be fired. Man, screw you. You want to be entertained. You want to have people that are out there make it real. And all of a sudden it does become something you don't know if it's real or not. And then you bitch about it. That's a minority out there. What product is in the ring, that's what matters.
I totally agree. What's in the ring is what matters. And we're going to be talking about what's in the ring this Saturday and Sunday for WrestleMania. But before we do, I want to remind you that we're live. And if you've got a question for John, now's your time to ask it. Our first question comes to us from Coach T from Wolfpack Basketball. Appreciate you jumping on here with us. John, he wants to know, you get to book yourself one last run in WWE. It's going to be 3 to 6 months long. What does that look like? Who are you facing? What events would you be working? So obviously we're fantasy booking. I want to say in a loud and clear voice, John's not going back to wrestle at WrestleMania this week.
No.
But hypothetically, if you were to make a comeback in WWE and you had a 3 or 6 month build, who in the landscape of WWE right now is interesting to you, John?
Yeah, and last time we did something similar to this, somebody put it up, several things put it up on the internet of John wants to call out John Cena. When I specifically said I didn't, but that's the guy that that I would love to face because of our history. You have to start with the top, and I want to do something interesting. I think Cody, obviously. I mean, and of course that's too easy. That's low hanging fruit. I know that, but I think that part is the fun part. And then I think something with the bloodline, maybe against the bloodline, I think could be interesting. I think the Rocks faction, whatever that comes to be, is going to be very interesting. Now, does that include Cena? Does it include a third person? Is a third person added at WrestleMania when he goes put his 3 fingers up? Does that mean that? I think that's very interesting. I think I'd love to be part of some type of faction that is going against, obviously one of the top guys. Because the last thing you want to do is come back and go against, bottom guys. You don't do that. But I think some type of faction would be best.
I can't wait to see what happens at WrestleMania. But you even mentioning the idea again about a third man has me sort of intrigued. There's also some news that's come out that we want to talk about, but we'll do that after I brag about True Classic. By now, you know that John and I are big believers in True Classic. We've got the product. We enjoy it, and you will too. Here's the deal, man. We're guys, and we don't want to have to put a whole bunch of thought into what we're wearing. We want it to be comfortable, and we want to look good, and we don't want to think about it. And for some of us, we have like tried and true stuff. Oh, this is my favorite shirt. I love wearing it all the time. Well, the heartbreaking thing is when that shirt starts to wear out, you're like, oh, yeah, I lost my favorite shirt. Not if you got multiples. That really is the best part about buying from True Classic. When you get the look and the feel that you like, you can load up. And True Classic has one mission: to make sure that guys look good and feel even better. And take it from us, they've nailed the fit, the feel, and the price across your entire wardrobe. not just t-shirts, but hoodies, jeans, activewear, everything you need to level up your everyday style. And when we say every day, we mean it. You can get stuff that looks good on a date or at work, or if you're going to church or just hanging out at the house. But True Classic isn't just about great clothes. Their brand DNA is built on being highly intentional in everything they do, from creating high quality essentials to making folks laugh with these silly ads to delivering what I believe I would call like Ritz-Carlton level customer service. They're also giving back to the communities they believe in. You see, every detail is done with purpose with True Classic. We've all been wearing True Classic for a while now here on the show, and from the first time we put it on, we knew something was different, man. These shirts fit you snug where you want it, but relaxed where you need it. There's no weird bunching or awkward tight spots. It's just a clean, effortless fit that works. So forget overpriced designer nonsense and skip the cheap throwaways. You know the ones we're talking about. True Classic delivers you premium essentials that are built for real life. Grab yours now at Target or Costco, or head on over to trueclassic.com/STW to get hooked up today. That's trueclassic.com/STW, trueclassic.com/STW. I don't know that
Hey, Conrad, let me change my answer a little bit. I've been thinking about this. El Grande Americano.
That's your guy.
That's who I would love to be with. That is who. Not wrestling, but be on his side. Now, I do have a problem with these some bitches come over in our country and taking jobs from guys like Chad Gable. I think it's I'm kind of pissed off that Chad Gable doesn't have a match at WrestleMania, and this El Grande Americano, whoever the hell he is, has one. But I would like to be part of the Big Lucha story because that's so much fun. It's fun being part of stories that are rivalries anyway. You know, like Texas and Oklahoma have this wonderful rivalry where we've hated each other since we were kids. We still do. And it's all fun. Mexico's the same thing. We have this rivalry with them. It's fun to have a rivalry with Europe or with Canada. You know, like when Bret Hart and those guys were doing that incredible storyline where Bret was this huge fan favorite in Canada and this huge villain in the United States. I would love to do something like that. So I'd love to be with Gunther, who I think the world of, by the way. Or I'd love to do something with Ray again and El Grande Americano. I think that's just a fun storyline.
Well, another fun storyline that everybody's paying attention to is this weekend with WrestleMania approaching. We all know what happens the Monday after WrestleMania. When do you remember the Monday after Mania becoming a thing? From a fan perspective, it feels like to me it was the night after WrestleMania 14. Shawn Michaels is gone. The Austin era is beginning. Austin's going to come out in a suit. He's going to get the new belt. We're going to find out for sure that this Mr. McMahon feud continues. But with Shawn gone, well, DX needs a new leader. So Triple H steps up, brings back the former 1-2-3 Kid, now as X-Pac. And we also make it official. The New Age Outlaws are now a part of DX. And even though I enjoyed creatively maybe the early DX stuff, there's no doubt that their biggest commercial success started that day, the night after WrestleMania in 1998. You were there. Was there a different time even before that the Monday after WrestleMania became a really big deal? Or do you agree with me that it really was probably 98?
I think it was 98. I don't think there's any doubt about it because we had to reset because we were losing one of the greatest stars of all time. And we've already lost some guys that were huge stars with Kevin and Scott and Brett. And Hogan, was not coming back. He's already down there, and he's going to be a big part of what they've got. And so we had to reset. And, WrestleMania was always a resetting anyway for the company. That was the beginning of our new fiscal year. I don't know if they actually had that in the books, the accounting books, but that's where you considered the start of the year for WWE was the day after WrestleMania. Guys that's when that guys got fired, laid off or whatever you want to call the correct term, or contracts not extended or whatever it was. But that's where you had a bunch of guys fired where it was at WrestleMania, because that's when you start the new year. And that's when you start with this new company. It was really day one to Vince. I remember one time after Mania, my wife had just written a book, and I see him and I say, hey, I want to give you a copy of Meredith's book. And he goes, oh, thank you very much. Meredith was there. He said hi to her. And he said, well, now the work begins. And everybody else was going to the WrestleMania party. WrestleMania was over. He was going into work because that was the start of the new year for him. He really saw it that way. But I think the definition of it came really in 98. I think you're correct because it's a resetting storyline-wise. But I think that day was completely different because we had to do something because we're losing Shawn Michaels.
It's interesting to take a look back at WrestleMania, and that's something we're going to be doing today in advance of also previewing the card this weekend. So if you've got a question for John, keep them coming. We want to hear from you. Chris Johnson, who's with us here live, says, why does JBL look the same as he did in 2004? Are you pickled? Is that the answer? A lot of beer?
That's what it is. I'm like Michael Hayes. Michael's been dead for like 10 years. He just won't go to the cemetery. He's actually pickled. And so that's what it is. I had to be pickled. I drank a lot in my youth, and I guess I just like froze at a certain age. But I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
Peter Pelis wants to know if he could relive one day of his career, what day would it be? Is there one day that stands out above all the others, John?
Yeah, there are a few. I mean, it's just, I remember there's a picture that I've got that I keep that I don't think I've ever posted of me right before I walked out before WrestleMania with Cena. And that's one of my favorite pictures, because I realized that this was a big moment. This was the time that I worked for my whole life, that this was it. And this was the culmination of my entire childhood, of my entire adult working life, of everything that I've worked for and everything I wanted to do. I'm going to walk out with the title main eventing WrestleMania. And I just remember sitting there, and somebody was obviously our Johnny Photo took this photo of me. It's one of my favorite photos of sitting there, and I was just getting ready. I was just thinking about the match and getting ready. I had no idea somebody took the picture, but I'm so glad they did, because that's one of my favorite. But that was one of the coolest moments of my life. And coming back from it, I remember sitting in the back, and Orlando was there, and I think Macaulay Culkin had just walked in to say hello, which had nothing to do with this, just huge celebrity that had walked in and just to say hi. And I remember just thinking, cool, I did it. It's done. I just remember thinking that. I thought that I went out the right way. I hadn't gone out yet, but that was, to me, the culmination of everything I'd wanted to do. And so that was a pretty cool day.
Man, I got a great question I want to ask you, because I thought of it as you're sort of describing that moment. You're one of the few guys who could answer this. If this was a traditional sport, I might be asking, hey, would you have rather been named, league MVP or played in the finals? And in your circumstance or situation, I can ask, we've all heard some guys say, oh, the belt's a prop, but I struggle with that, because I do know that forever and ever after that, anything you ever do in life, you can always be billed as the WWE champion. Whether that's autograph circuits or public appearances or whatever, it does have some marketing value. And I get that, no, technically he didn't really win the match. I get that. But I'm just saying, if we set all that aside for a minute, I want you to compare and contrast what felt bigger and what felt more real: winning the world title in WWE or main eventing WrestleMania?
Main event in WrestleMania, because by then it had time to sink in. We were in Norfolk when I won the world title, and I remember I went out. It's a pretty cool story. I went out with my wife afterwards, and just to have a couple drinks, and there was nobody there. I don't know if the guys were going to a different TV or something. We stayed because she was flying back the next day, and I was going to probably drive by myself or something to the next TV. I don't remember why. We were about the only ones there, and some fan came up and asked for a picture, and my wife took it. And about 20 years later, this was recently, that same fan came up to me and said, hey, would you sign this picture? And I looked at it. I said, oh, my God, that was in the bar. I said, because there was very few people. I mean, there's literally like only 3 or 4 people in the whole bar. Just me and my wife just, there, just listening to some music, having some drinks. And he goes, I'm the one that took a picture with you. Your wife took it. I said, holy cow, that's great. But I don't know if it had sunk in yet. After you hold it for that, a long time, you realize, the importance of it and the importance of what comes next. And that is that I've got to do everything I can to put all my equity into this title belt so that I can give it to somebody, and that equity transfers to that person. And so I knew how important my role was at that point. Before that, you're getting something, and I don't think that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. It's a prop. It's like saying, oh, I'm a CEO. Oh, that name is just a prop. No, it's not. It means you run the company. When you got that title, it means you're the man. You get paid a lot more. If it's just a prop, then explain to me the difference in salaries, because I've had the title and I've not had the title, and it is a significant difference in what you get paid and also how you're treated. But I think losing the title, and not necessarily losing the title, but main eventing that WrestleMania and knowing how important it was that I did my role well, because I had to give that to John Cena. And not that he needed it. He was going to do it anyway, but that was my role. And so I think it was more cool to headline WrestleMania because I knew going into it, this is the biggest show they have. This is the biggest match they have. And it's all not on me, but a lot of it's on me to give as much as I can to John.
I find it fascinating because we always talk about, or we used to talk about guys like Peyton Manning before he won the Super Bowl. And we'd say, hey, he's the MVP and he's the best quarterback, but he'll never win the big one. And before that, they said that about Dan Marino. In wrestling, we would say things like, hey, who's the greatest, to never hold the world title? And a guy like Ted DiBiase would come up because he was never world champion. But I mean, in storyline, he was for a few days when he bought the belt from Andre, but you get where I'm going.
Yep.
But he did work in the main event of a WrestleMania, but unfortunately for him, it was a tournament format. Now, he was a central figure in there, but it's not like, we knew that he was going to be in the main event. I mean, I guess you knew, but it wasn't marketed that way on the poster. And I just find it interesting that when, we're even celebrating a guy like Ric Flair, who won 16 world championships, he never really main evented a WrestleMania. Yes, he had WrestleMania title matches, but he didn't go on last. And I think that is probably the right answer, John, that you gave, that most wrestlers, if they were given their pick, hey, you could be the world champion or you could main event WrestleMania. No disrespect. You and I both think a lot of him. Jinder Mahal was the world champion. The main event spot at WrestleMania eluded him, and it's eluded CM Punk so far, but he's going to main event this coming Saturday. And I want to ask you about that. That's one of the biggest talking points going into this. Does Saturday night count as a WrestleMania main event, at least to you, John?
It does. Yes, it does. I think the guy who's closing the show on Sunday is probably the bigger main event, if you want to call it that. But they're two different shows. And so, yes, I'm not going to split hairs about this and say it's not a main event. It is a main event. They're calling it a main event. We've had double main events before, and I have no issue with that. I think it's the main event. Not a doubt in my mind. For whatever, the show that's being closed on Sunday, people may hold that match a little bit higher. I don't know, but it is certainly. But if you main event in your house, if you main event Armageddon, if you main event a pay-per-view, you main evented a pay-per-view. It's WrestleMania, and you've main evented it. So CM Punk is main eventing WrestleMania. In my opinion, not a doubt in my mind. And I think it's wonderful for him. And I have a feeling he's really going to love this. There's nothing like main event in WrestleMania, man. It's just, God almighty, man. That's the biggest. You work toward that all year. Everything you do all year works toward that show. And so you want to be in the big match. And to be in that's pretty cool.
Everybody's talking about the WrestleMania 9 documentary that was posted on Peacock over the weekend. Have you had a chance to catch any of that yet, John?
No.
Well, there's some fun behind-the-scenes footage that I think you'll like. They talk about scaling the buildings and ticketing, and there's a lot of never-before-seen footage. And, of course, our buddy Bruce Pritchard is one of the talking heads, so I think you'll dig it. But one of the things that I really enjoyed seeing was a conversation that maybe we wouldn't have imagined would have been recorded. But Vince McMahon was talking to a young Shawn Michaels. Shawn, of course, was going to kick off that show at WrestleMania. He was going to wrestle Tatanka. He's the Intercontinental Champion. That's WrestleMania 9. We know the next year in Madison Square Garden, he's going to steal the show with a ladder match. He's going to have a title match at WrestleMania 11, and the boyhood dream comes true at WrestleMania 12. So this is really the start of his big singles run. And to see Vince sort of giving him the advice ahead of time of, have you wrestled in the daytime? Have you wrestled outdoors during the daytime before, Shawn? Well, it's a little different. The sound goes up to the heavens. I just thought all of that, as he's sort of explaining that to a young Shawn Michaels. I kind of forget. I think most fans forget that, hey, even Shawn Michaels was a young guy sometime, and he had his first outdoor, because we all just assume, well, he was born Yoda, and he just walks around and knows everything about wrestling. But to see that moment between Vince and Shawn was pretty cool. You've wrestled in a lot of WrestleManias, indoors and outdoors. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, for sound, it's indoors. There's no doubt about it. I remember when Steve had Kevin Owens in that match, and I don't know if I can't remember. That was an outdoor arena, wasn't it? It was a huge arena, whatever it was.
And Dallas a couple of years ago, it was indoors, but it was the stadium for Dallas.
It was a stadium, and the problem is in stadiums you can't always. You don't always hear the crowd on you like a basketball arena. Basketball arena is built with the crowd right on top of you. And especially when you add all the chairs on the back, but a huge arena, sometimes the sound goes up and you've got these cavernous, ceilings in these things, whether they're open or not, you lose a lot of that sound because it goes up. And same as outdoors. Outdoors, they can be incredibly loud. If you're in the ring, sometimes you don't know what they're doing. It's disconcerting. So that's why Vince is explaining this to Sean about the reaction that you're going to get out there. And I remember Steve, I said, man, Steve, that was awesome. Because I thought it was. I thought he did a great job with Kevin. I didn't know Steve, by the way, I didn't know Steve had not been preparing for this match. I thought he'd been working out for like 6 months. I saw him practicing back there. That was like the first time he'd been in the ring in years. So he basically just showed up and did a match is what he did, which is, I love it. Not like Steve needs practice, but you think you just need to go through it, just for your own self. He did a wonderful job. And I said, it was great. He goes, I couldn't hear the crowd that well. I said, Steve, they were smoking. And I said, wait till you hear it played back. And, which I'm sure that, he watched it back and could tell. But sometimes when you're out there, you can't tell. You can't tell how loud they are. And if you can't tell how loud they are, you can't tell what they're into. And that's really tough when you're out there and you're calling the match on the fly, like I'm sure Sean was doing, and like Steve was doing. And so that's why it's so important what Vince went through to him, that it's a complete different dynamic.
I enjoyed that match, and I enjoyed that, it gave us everything we needed from Stone Cold. I think the hardcore Stone Cold fans, they don't need to see 20 minutes of chain wrestling. We need to see some punching and kicking and Stone Cold stunning and hell raising and head wagging and finger wagging and beer chugging, and we're good. And
that was all on Steve, by the way.
Yes.
The creative that came was Steve was just going to kind of go out there and stun him, but Steve wanted to put all that in, and I'm so glad he did, because I thought it was absolutely fantastic, because I'm a huge Steve Austin fan as well.
How could you not be? And you and I are both fans of the Blue Meanie, who's with us here live. Shout out to the real life Brian Heffron. Looking good, fellas. WrestleMania was a holiday in my house. As a kid, my folks let me have Mania Friday off from school to have a 3-day weekend. How cool is that? An extra day to get ready for WrestleMania.
How cool is the Blue Meanie sent something in? I love it. That's great. When you said Blue Meanie's here, I thought, no, he's not. But he is.
No, he's actually here. Yeah.
I love Meanie. I told you the other day, I said, Meanie's an expert on UFOs. And you're like, I didn't think I'd ever hear that phrase. That means, but he is. We had some UFO guys on our podcast. It was me and Meanie and Gerald Briscoe and Stories Briscoe and Bradshaw. And Meanie is just an expert on this stuff. He loves it. And he's, he's a very smart guy. He's a very articulate guy. And he had so much fun with those guys. That's why I wanted him on it, because I'm a little bit of a skeptic, and Mr. Briscoe is a Okie, so he has no idea and about anything. Nah, I'm kidding. Mr. Briscoe is more in Meanie's camp. But we had a fun time together on the show talking to these UFO guys. It was a lot of fun.
I do want to hit some big news that is all over the internet today, so I don't think we're necessarily giving a spoiler. But there was a report that Jeff Cobb has been granted his release to leave New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he's going to be having his last match on the 19th for New Japan against Tanahashi. That's this coming Saturday. And after that, well, most people believe he is headed to the WWE. Now, if he has his last match for New Japan on Saturday, a lot of people wonder, might we see him somewhere Sunday, or more importantly, the Monday after WrestleMania? But people are saying that about Rusev, and they're saying that about Aleister Black. I would even argue that the Monday after WrestleMania is going to have as much, perhaps even more anticipation for WrestleMania. Now, to people outside of the bubble, certainly WrestleMania is the big attraction. But the diehards, the hardcores, I feel like they're more interested to see who's debuting and what new storylines get kicked off the Monday after. Do you agree with that? And what do you know, if anything, about Jeff Cobb?
I completely agree with it. And I was looking at the shows that they've got in Vegas this weekend. So I'm going out there. I'm not going out for WWE, because I want to give the misrep, the impression that I'm going to be out there with it. I'm not going out there with Raw, with WrestleCon, and I am bringing a couple of clotheslines just in case. But for some other shows, I believe that I might just decide to show up on. But I was looking at all the shows that are out there. How you're having to book this is amazing. Because, you're not booking one event. You're not booking Saturday night. You have to book things, starting earlier in the week. Then you book a show on Friday that has to lead in the pay-per-view. That pay-per-view has to lead into another pay-per-view. Then that pay-per-view has to lead into Raw. But you've got so much content here with this guy, Jeff Cobb, with Rusev, with Aleister Black, with so much people wondering out there what's going to happen, that the anticipation is going to be huge. I don't know if there's going to be debuts because I don't know any of the creative, obviously. I think there will be, and I think that's going to be very exciting because I was looking at the card, and the card's fantastic. I think it's wonderful. But you look at it and you think, okay, there's going to be something else. Something else is going to happen. This is WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania weekend. And what's so cool about it is you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to happen on SmackDown, on WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 2, or if it's going to happen on Monday Night Raw. And I think that's one of the things that people love for the weekend. That Monday Night Raw is so freaking fun. I remember when Dolph cashed in on Alberto, and I think we're in the Bronx after WrestleMania. That was one of the loudest reactions. I've never heard anything like that. That was freaking amazing. I mean, I was there when Seth cashed in doing commentary out in San Francisco. But that night after, that place went crazy when Dolph cashed in. I mean, they were so wanting to see something historic. And I think that they're probably going to see something historic on Monday. And I'm not giving away a potential spoiler or anything. I have no idea. I'm guessing like everybody else, but I'm guessing from a person who's been around a long time.
Well, there's no guessing when it comes to BlueChew. It works every single time. And now BlueChew Max is here. It's arrived, and it combines the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis into one chewable. This is a combo that acts fast and it lasts, and it's going to make you feel like you're a part of the APA, always pounding ass. And guys, be ready when she needs it. Get your first month of BlueChew free and take it from John. He knows a thing or two about stiff shots. Ask the Blue Meanie. Great sex is just a few clicks away. Sign up right now at BlueChew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. BlueChew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of BlueChew free when you use the promo code WRESTLE. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code WRESTLE when you visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast and JBL's Wiener from Hell, which is his signature. I've heard about that. It's the erection from hell. So duck when he throws it your way, or he may dislocate his shoulder. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but go use the promo code. You'll be glad you did. What are we doing right now? Just talking about BlueChew in front of God and everybody.
The Wiener from Hell. I love it.
The Wiener from Hell. Well, listen, let's talk about WrestleMania this weekend. There's lots of news and rumor and innuendo going on right now with this card. We're going to run down all the individual matches, but Matthew Rodriguez is here with us live, and he says rumor and innuendo is saying that Mariah May is joining WWE. Do you think Mariah will be a huge star inside the WWE bubble? That's an interesting take. I don't have it on any sort of confirmed basis that Mariah May is here and headed to the WWE, but I keep seeing that in the chat. Have you heard this, and what do you make of that?
I've heard it, but only through the internet. And when I say I've heard stuff, I don't want to give people the impression that I've got heard it from somebody in WWE. I have not. I heard it off the internet rumors like everybody else. I think almost anybody that comes over, they're going to make into stars, or they're certainly going to give them the opportunity because they want them to come over and they want to show them how they're going to be treated at WWE. That's gone on since the beginning of time. When you get a guy from another territory that you want to hurt or you're in competition with, when you bring them in, you make sure they're put in a huge position, and you make sure that they have every opportunity to get over, because that will bring everybody else and go, hey, man, look what they did by going to WWE. I want to go there too. And all of a sudden now people are in other companies are thinking, I'd rather be somewhere else. And that's part of competition. That's what any company would do and any wrestling group would do.
Usually when you say this phrase, it has a negative connotation, but I think what you're saying is they want to make an example out of somebody in a positive way.
That's right. 100%. You'll make an example out of them and get them and have them make a lot of money. When Vince would come in famously, he would give guys, a nice little envelope or a nice little check, all cash, just to let them know how much money they're getting. The Hebners went up there and weren't sure about going to work. And then he gave them when I think it was Earl first, and then it was Dave first and brought in Earl, I think it was. And he said, when you see how much money Vince is going to hand you, you'll make your decision. And that's what Vince did with a lot of guys. he made an example and the guys who go back and go, you have no idea how much money they just handed me. And that's the essence of competition. It's why Vince was so good about it. That's why he would treat guys incredibly well, especially when they first would come in from a different territory. And I'm sure it's the same now.
Of course, when AEW was debuting a lot of talent, seemingly one after another a handful of years ago, I mean, I think if memory serves, we saw Ruby Soho and Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson and Suzuki all debut on the same show. I could be awful now. But it almost feels like that's what we might be seeing happening soon with WWE. And it's already crowded. You've already got a lot of talent that you're trying to get on TV. And I mean, we just saw the debut of Rey Fenix and not too far before that with Penta. And now, seemingly, if these reports are true, Mariah may be on the list, but we're led to believe maybe Jeff Cobb. We're led to believe maybe Aleister Black and maybe Rusev. Again, John and I have no inside information. But you probably don't want to have all of those talent debut immediately after WrestleMania because, well, I think Jim Cornette said if you've got a locker room full of 7-footers, you ain't got no giants. Well, kind of the same thing here. How can I get excited about 5 people at once? Am I off base on that?
No. Oh my God, no, 100%. The thing that you do as a young promoter that I've seen it all my whole life is you'd hot shot it. And you bring all these guys in and say, hey, look at all what we got, but then what do you do next week? You can't do that because you can't follow it. So no, I think it's going to come over in the next couple months. And I think that to me, that's by far the best way to do it.
We're having a little fun talking about WrestleMania. We are indeed live with John. If you've got a question, keep them coming in. Let's do one before we start running down some of the WrestleMania card. Coach T wants to know, as someone who grew up as a wrestling fan, did you think back in the day that the WWF should have had a TV champion? Of course, we saw TV champions existed in the NWA and then later WCW and even ECW. But for all the different titles that WWE created through the years, they never had what they called a television champion. Did you think that was a missed opportunity as a fan when you were younger? And do you remember this even coming up with Vince in all your years?
No, I never remember it coming up. We created some titles. So we created, obviously the Intercontinental title was created, I guess, 1979 when Pat won it in that mysterious tournament down in Rio from Johnny Rods. I quoted Vince one time on air about that one time that he defeated Johnny, because that was the initial story was he defeated, Johnny Rods. And Vince's like, where'd you come up with that? From you. You said it years ago. And he had forgotten, which obviously wasn't important because obviously the tournament was a little mysterious. But you had the European title, then you had the hardcore title, you had 24/7 title. So you had all these different titles that have come up different times. For whatever reason, they just chose not to do a TV title. And I agree with that. I think it sounds more prestigious to have a European title, to have a hardcore title, to have an Intercontinental title, to have, titles for different shows. The WWE Championship, the World Championship, the Universal Championship, all that different stuff. The thing is, obviously, what you're doing with this is when you have your champion is out, your Intercontinental champion or your European champion or your TV champion can headline the show with a title belt. And so, it's important to have that. Plus, it's important to have for extra storylines.
I could go with it a few different ways. I do like the idea behind a television title in terms of there's going to be rules that you have to be in order to win this belt. It's got to be in a certain time limit. But it always makes me chuckle when I see an independent promotion who has a TV title but no TV. Or, these days it feels like every promotion that has a television contract, well, they're not really running house shows. So effectively, every belt is the TV belt. So anyway, we could get down the rabbit hole. It's supposed to be fun. Sometimes it's not, though, and that's an unpleasant question we'll face here before we do our WrestleMania rundown. Guy W. Johns says, vitriol from some fans towards Charlotte, one of the best performers on the roster, seems oddly personal. Did she punch a baby or something? Now more than ever, I'm rooting for the queen at WrestleMania. I actually had a person who's not necessarily in the wrestling bubble, but caught up on some of that controversy last week, asked me about this, John. And I tried to explain because they wanted to know the same thing. Boy, she must be a great bad guy for everyone to seemingly feel this way. And I tried to explain, well, it's kind of like a few years ago, every football fan hated Alabama and every baseball fan once upon a time hated the Lakers, or, every basketball fan or I'm going the Yankees, the Lakers. There is this pushback in the NFL, man. It was like in fashion to dunk on and crap on the Patriots. Nobody liked the Patriots. And before that, it was the Cowboys. Like, I think fans on some level, it's just human nature. You want to see something different. I don't like that they keep winning. I don't like that Nick Saban people hated Nick Saban with no real reason to hate Nick Saban. They just hated the success. That's just the dynamic of human psychology, right, John?
Yeah, and what a babyface turn Nick Saban and Bill Belichick have had.
Yes.
I mean, these were the two most hated guys in sports. I mean, everybody hated those guys because they won so freaking much. And now all of a sudden they go on these talk shows and you listen to what they're talking about. It's like I played a little pro football. I coached in college. They're talking a game I don't understand. They're that freaking good. I listen to them. It's like, oh, my God. These guys are a different level than anybody I've ever heard. It's so fun to listen to those guys. And then you see how personable that Nick Saban is, and Bill Belichick, which doesn't come across on television with them on the sidelines, getting upset and throwing headphones and things. And you realize why they were such good recruiters. I got to play one time. I was in a golf tournament in Tyler, Texas, a charity golf tournament, and I'll show up. They go, "Hey, we got a big treat for you today." I said, "What is it?" "You're playing with Barry Switzer." I said, "Was Saddam Hussein busy?" I said, because that's the most hated guy I've ever known is Barry Switzer in this state. So they put me with Barry Switzer. He was the nicest man. I wanted to hate him. And not really. He'd always been, our rival against Darryl Roll and Earl Campbell and those guys. He was the nicest freaking man. He was so fun to be out there with. You see why he was such a great recruiter. You see that with Nick Saban now and with Bill Belichick. Like these are really good dudes. You have to be at that level and to have the rapport that they had with their players. And the same thing is with Charlotte. When you win so long, people are going to hate you. People want to hate what's great. You turn on them eventually. You turn on the Bulls eventually back in the 90s. And to me, that's all that is. There's really not a lot more than that. And if people are turning on Charlotte, so what? She's going to be in a title match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's easy, to see where it comes from. She just keeps winning, and people hate a winner in all sports.
Yeah, and she's an fantastic athlete who has incredible matches.
No doubt. And by the way, she's a heel, so you hating her is kind of the plan. Ryan Heffron, of course, we know him as the Blue Meanie. He's got a fun story about that TV title idea. He says, related to a TV title with no TV, I once did a show with a tag team who called themselves the Kansas City Outlaws, and they were billed from parts unknown. How good is that? Kansas City Outlaws.
It's the best. Some of these guys come up with these names. It's just unbelievable. And you see them, you think, do you really think that's going to work? I mean, do you really believe, like when you look in the mirror at that and you're from parts unknown and you're the Kansas City Outlaw, do you really think that all of that's really a good idea? You just want to ask them and get in their mind and find out how that came about.
Fun stuff. Of course, this weekend is WrestleMania, and the entire wrestling world wants to know what Steven Taylor is asking us here. Who would JBL book as Randy Orton's opponent this weekend? Lots of speculation about who this would be. I even saw some betting lines who said that Nick Aldis is the betting favorite, but there's lots of other names bandied around, and I saw Ric Flair at 100-1 odds. I know it's a long shot, but well, that's easy money to say that it will not be Ric Flair if you could bet the other way on that. Who do you think we wind up seeing him step between the ropes with?
Well, who are the other, like below Nick Aldis? Who is Nick Aldis the favorite?
People are saying it might be Solo Sikoa. Others are saying, it could be someone like a Rey Fenix. We've certainly seen Rusev and Aleister Black's name bandied around. I think there's a few people, even a Sami Zayn, who find themselves without a dance partner this WrestleMania. But I think most people, the smart money is on Nick Aldis. Is Nick the choice you would have, or would you go a different direction?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. And Nick is that guy. I've always thought Nick looks like a throwback, like a 1930 NWA champion. He's got that really distinctive look, always wears those nice suits, got a very tapered, V, waist and shoulders. And, he just looks fantastic. He's really, good looking guy. He looks like a wrestler. like one of the old champions, which to me is a huge compliment. But we hadn't seen him wrestle in so long, and WWE fans, a lot of them have not seen him wrestle. So I don't know. I mean, you'd have to do something really kind of cool with it. I don't know how the response would be. I think it'd probably be pretty good. I would like to see it. I just don't know if the buildup can get there in 2 days with that. What do you think?
I mean, it feels like storyline wise, they've laid all the groundwork for it to be Nick Aldis, and I would love for that to happen. I mean, this is a guy who we've never even seen wrestle in WWE, and talk about a big way to debut his in-ring work. I mean, at WrestleMania, the biggest platform he's ever been on, and
against one of the best workers of all time, in Randy Orton. They will have the fact that they'll have a hell of a match, and the fact that Nick is a hell of a worker, that is taken for granted. I just didn't know if the buildup was going to be enough for it. That people realize how good of a wrestler he is. Obviously, they'll find out pretty quick.
Well, we found out last week that WWE has announced some of their legacy inductees this year. The class includes Kamala, Dory Funk Sr., and Ivan Koloff. Of course, these are iconic characters and figures throughout the history of wrestling. Dory Funk Sr., of course, being the father of Dory Funk Jr., and, of course, the late, great Terry Funk. Kamala was an incredible creation from Jerry Jarrett that headlined and made big money with Hulk Hogan, and then even had a second run with WCW as a part of the, maybe ill-fated Dungeon of Doom. But Ivan Koloff, man, when you talk about big moments in history, I don't think people talk about his win over Bruno enough. But what an important figure in wrestling history. Most of us were familiar with his work, certainly for Jim Crockett Promotions, as really the mouthpiece of the Russian stable. What do you think of this legacy class that's been announced here, John?
I think it's terrific. And Ivan Koloff, one of the things is when you take a title off a long reigning champion, you got to have the right guy. And I think it's better to always have a heel, especially, when you talk about a babyface. See, I thought it was a mistake to have Hogan lose the title to Warrior, because you have one of the most charismatic guys of all time, Warrior, who's not a good worker, but incredibly charismatic and incredibly over. I think you should have put a mailman in between them. I think you should have put a heel like a Ivan Koloff in between them, and drop it, and then drop it to Warrior. I thought it would have worked better. I understand what they're doing, but I mean, it's just impossible to live up to what Hogan did with Giant and 93,000 people, the start of WrestleMania and all that. It's a little different with Bruno, but the prestige of taking that title off of Bruno, the great Bruno Sammartino, in the Garden, I mean, that's a massive burden. And Koloff was able to do that. That by itself puts that man in the Hall of Fame.
I've always wondered why Vince didn't do with the Hogan Warrior thing exactly what he did with Backlund Hogan. Famously, the Iron Sheik was at the right time, at the right place, and he's the guy who beats Backlund. We know he's just going to be the placeholder champion, if you will, or an interim champion, a short-term champion, whatever you want to call it. Here comes Hulkamania, and it's on a freight train, and we're off to the races. But it feels like we could have used Mr. Perfect in that way. Yep. Because Mr. Perfect goes into WrestleMania 6 completely undefeated. If he had, won the Rumble, and I know back then they didn't have the stakes like they do now, but if Mr. Perfect somehow wins the Rumble, and then Jack Tunney, as a result of that, awards him a title shot against Hulk Hogan because, hey, he's beat everybody literally in this Rumble. He deserves a shot. If Perfect were to win, then it's very easy to have Warrior take it off of Mr. Perfect at that point and say, wow, he did something even Hulk Hogan couldn't do. He beat Mr. Perfect. That's right. They didn't do that creative. Why do you think Vince sort of did an about face and didn't just copy exactly what he'd done with the Iron Sheik before?
Yeah, and you're right about that. He had done the exact same thing before he knew it. I think Warrior was so popular, Vince thought that maybe he could carry that. And I don't know anybody in the history of wrestling that could have carried that right after Hogan, as big as Hogan was at the time. And because obviously, like a Stone Cold or a Rock, obviously you can compare them equally with how big of stars they were. But following somebody, you wouldn't have been that star because the spotlight wouldn't have been on you. It would have been on Hogan. And Perfect would have been the ideal person to do it. He can work. He had a ton of heat. He would have made Warrior look great. And all of a sudden now you've got the hated Kurt Hennig because he took the title off the guy you love of Hulkamania. Well, who can come and make vengeance for that? that's when the Warrior comes riding in on the white horse and wins it, and all of a sudden now people are like, oh great, you did it for us, you did it for Hogan, instead of beating Hogan. I just thought it was a mistake to go babyface to babyface without some type of mailman in between, and there's no way that Warrior could live up to that. I mean, no way. I mean, that Hogan was one of the most charismatic guys of all time. So was Warrior, by the way. But from all of the history, I agree. You could have put Perfect in there. Could have put Ted DiBiase in there. There are a lot of guys you could have put in there. There wasn't a lot. There was a few guys that you could have put in there.
Of course, that's happening on Friday night as part of the Hall of Fame festivities at the Fountain Blue. It's going to be happening in the middle of the night. Will you be at the Hall of Fame this year, John?
Don't think so. So far, I'm not going anywhere with WWE. So
okay, we'll move on.
As far as I know, there's no heat. So, but I hadn't been invited to the Hall of Fame. I hadn't been invited to anything. I was invited to something out there. I want to, be sure and say that. But I couldn't make it because of a conflicting.
You already committed somewhere else. I got you.
And I told them that, and they completely understood it. And they said, no big deal. It's, so as far as I know, there's no heat or anything. But as far as I know, I'm not going to be at the Hall of Fame or anything else.
Let's talk about some of the matches that we're going to be watching this weekend. The War Raiders will be in there with New Day for the WWE Men's Tag Team Championship. Of course, New Day is, it's a whole new day for New Day. I like this presentation. I like the act. I think it has legs. If I were a betting man, I'd put my money on New Day here. What say you, John?
I put the mortgage on New Day, and no doubt about it. I know we're going to see some swerves. I don't think here, but you never know. I mean, sometimes when you're booking a card, you book it and you put some swerves in there just to put swerves. Sometimes I think right here, New Day is the one that's got incredible legs. Kofi and Xavier, those guys are incredibly talented. They are great heels, and they built this up fantastic. People love Big E. So it's great that they constantly are trying to erase Big E's history. I love the whole storyline of Kofi and Xavier.
I do too. I think it's a fun storyline. It does make me wonder, I guess the way that the War Raiders could retain and still everybody be happy about it is somehow, some way Big E gets involved. I could see that. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm really interested in LA Knight and Jacob Fatu. These are two guys who were outside the tent for WWE for a long time, and people thought, hey, one day is this Saturday. Jacob Fatu, the former MLW champion, has been tearing it up on the indies here in America, maybe one of the worst kept secrets. He's going to have a big WrestleMania debut here against a guy that a lot of people feel like is ready to move up the ladder into that world title conversation. He had so much momentum these last few years talking about LA Knight. He comes in as the U.S. champion. Do you think LA retains, or does Jacob Fatu win his first gold in WWE?
I think for every reason that you just said that LA Knight loses the title because if he is going to move up, he doesn't need to have that. He's got to get rid of the title at some point anyway. So if he is going to move up in that picture, you can't have the title. You want that. You want the title on somebody else so he can start working toward something bigger. I hate to say bigger when it's a title, but it is bigger. And Fatu it's his first WrestleMania. This freaking guy is unbelievably talented. I would love to have worked with this young man. He is so freaking good. He has a presence in the ring, his athleticism. I mean, the stuff he can do. I mean, it's just it's amazing. I mean, these Islanders. I've been around so many Rikishi and Haku and Barb and all these guys. I mean, they're just, I don't know what it is. They're just good. I don't know if they say the same thing about us guys from Texas. I hope they do. But my God, man, it's just, he's unbelievable. Especially when, when you're talking about in your family. Second generation, third generation guys are just better than the rest of us because they grew up in it. He grew up around all these, knowing these great wrestlers. And I think he's just fantastic. So to me, put money on Jacob Fatu.
I had a similar conversation with Eric Bischoff not too long ago. I want to put you on the spot now. Do you think we see Jacob Fatu in a WrestleMania main event? And if so, where would you put the over-under on the number of years?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Right?
Yeah, very interesting. Is he going to have a mouthpiece?
Well, I mean, listen, everything's on the table. when I asked Eric Bischoff, Eric thinks he's going to wrestle in the main event of one of the nights next year at WrestleMania. I think that might be too soon, but I do see if the number was, say, if the over-under was 3, I might take the over, but just barely.
Yeah, I think he's going to be around a while. You know, he doesn't do stuff that's too dangerous, even though he does incredible stuff. You know, he looks like he's very safe. He's very strong, it looks like, and he's very athletic. So he's not doing stuff that's beyond his ability when he's doing all this crazy stuff, which, you know, that's what you want, because you don't want these guys to get hurt. And I don't think next year, but I think maybe the next. I think within a couple of years he could be main eventing WrestleMania. I think there's a good chance of that. He is an unbelievable talent. I mean, you just watch him, and there's something about him that's just different. You know, it's like you pick 10 guys in a room, or say pick 100 guys in a room, and they're all equal wrestlers. And then all of a sudden, one just draws your attention. That's him. There's something about him that is just different in a very good way. So yeah, I think he could headline WrestleMania in a couple of years.
Let's talk about the next match here. We've got Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton on deck. This is going to be a grudge match in addition to a women's match. This may actually have more heat than anything else going into the show, which I got to admit is kind of unique for the women. Not to say that they've been an afterthought at WrestleMania, but usually we can sort of predict it. But I'm seeing a lot of experts split here. Some say it's Tiffany's time to shine and she'll retain. Others say, nope, the money's in the chase and we're crowning Charlotte Flair champion. What would you do, and what do you expect that they'll do this weekend with Charlotte and Tiffany?
No doubt what I'd do. I'd put the belt on Charlotte. Not a doubt what I do. I think she's a terrific heel, and she's got a ton of heat. You listen to people that you're quoting, you know, off the internet stuff. They're mad at her for some reason. You know, for whatever reason is, they're not taking her side in this. Now, maybe it's because she's a heel and they're conflating that with her real person of you know, Ashley Flair. Don't know that. Whatever it is, though, it's working. I'm not sure it's supposed to be working or not. I don't know, and I don't really care. I think she's got a ton of freaking heat. I would put the title on Charlotte. Now, what WWE is going to do, I don't know what their long-term plans are. They may have something different for Tiffany planned. They may have something different for Charlotte. You know, a lot of plan, you know, it depends on where they're going. You know, and Charlotte is such a big star, she doesn't need a title. And so that may factor into the decision of keeping it on Tiffany. But what I would do personally is not a doubt in my mind. I'd put it on Charlotte. I'd put all that heat on her.
I think she is the betting favorite last I looked as well. Rey Mysterio is going to be in there against El Grande Americano. You alluded to this at the top of the show, how ridiculous you think it is that some newcomers like El Grande Americano, they get a WrestleMania shot. Guys like The Miz and Sami Zayn, no soup for you. I don't understand why this happened or how this happened. Maybe El Grande Americano has nude pictures of somebody or something. He's got to have some leverage to talk his way into a WrestleMania match so quickly. Who would he ever beat, John? And do you think that he'll beat Rey Mysterio this weekend?
I had worked down in Mexico for 30-something years ago. I'd never heard of him. So I don't know where this guy's from. I have no idea. I just know that he comes up to America and takes our jobs. And, that's a real issue here. That's a real problem. That being said, I think El Grande Americano beats Rey Mysterio. And I think Rey Mysterio is the greatest luchador of all time. Without a doubt, I think he is. And one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But I think because he is, he can afford to be beat. Yes. And I think probably that's why they're going to have slip on a banana peel, as they say. And El Grande Americano, I tell you what, man, there's some legs to this if they want to really go with it. I think this could be a lot of fun. And I think Ray could be a big part of it. And I think he probably will. But if you beat El Grande Americano here, it might kill it. You know, so to me, I think you have to put El Grande Americano over.
I think so too. I'm looking forward to that too. I'm really enjoying the presentation. And I want to remind everybody, this isn't the first time something like this has been done, and it always works fabulously well. Down in Florida, Championship Wrestling from Florida, we heard that Dusty Rhodes was banned from competition, but here came the Midnight Rider. And over in Mid-South for Bill Watts, well, JYD was not allowed, so here comes Stagger Lee. And I don't know if you know this, but once upon a time in the Tennessee territory, Tennessee Lee, Colonel Robert Fuller, he actually donned a Lucha Libre hood in the Tennessee territory. Did you know about this, John?
I did not know about that. That's the tallest luchador ever.
His gimmick name was El Mucho Ding Dong. I've heard that, but
I was just thinking something. That's fantastic. Oh my God. Oh my God. I got so many stories. I can't tell one of them on this thing. Oh my God.
By the way, we used to sell a t-shirt on Tony Schiavone's podcast called Colonel Parker's Jump Rope Academy. Let's talk about the men's world title. It's Gunther and Jey Uso. A lot of steam on this one. It feels like at first people really, really wanted Jey Uso to have his moment, and then I guess be careful what you wish for. Maybe they weren't as high on him being in a title fight with Gunther, and they put a lot of heat on it with the blood, and now people are more engaged. People care more. Even Gunther's been doing interviews with Ariel Helwani recently where he said, hey, it wouldn't have necessarily been his dream WrestleMania opponent, but now he gets it. And I guess we're all wondering, is Jey Uso going to get it this weekend? Is the entire crowd going to be yeeting, or does Gunther's reign remain supreme? What do you think is next here? What happens in this one, Jey or Gunther? Who do you got?
I tell you what you better do. You better call the Las Vegas PD because these boys are going to steal the show. That's what I think. I think this is matchups make matches. Styles make matches. You have two guys out there who do a lot of the same things. Sometimes it doesn't work. You have two contrasting styles, and sometimes it's magic. Sometimes it's not. I think this is going to be magic, and I think this could be the match of the two nights. Not a doubt. You have an incredibly over Jey Uso and one of the best wrestlers in the world. And Gunther is so freaking good. He is a great heel. He is going to be able to make him look fantastic. Not that Jey Uso needs it. He's going to be able to do his part. But because you have those contrasting styles of this big brute in Gunther and this incredible popular guy who flies all over the place in Jey Uso, I think this is going to be freaking awesome. I think this may steal the freaking show.
I think so too. I say it a lot that I think managing expectations is one of the keys to life. And I feel like so many fans are down on this one already unfairly that it will exceed all expectations. There's no way that Gunther's going to go out there at WrestleMania and lay an egg. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and Jey can work, by the way. I mean, Jey can work. He's a good freaking worker. And Gunther is, man, he's a different level. He is so freaking good. I think it's going to be an incredible match. And as far as the finish, I'd put it on Jey. I think, Jey needs an opportunity here, and I think Gunther has got so much heat and so much ability that he doesn't need it. And you'll find something to do with Gunther. I think if you don't put it to Jey, I think it could hurt him, is what I think. I don't know. Depending on what they have storyline-wise. If you have something backed up the next 2 or 3 pay-per-views, you get it. I'm not privy to any of that information. I just know this in a silo. I put it on Jey.
I would put it on Jey too. I think that the fans are ready for it. And I get that, he's not necessarily everybody's favorite. But I just want to remind you, just 6 months ago, I saw more kids dressed up like Jey Uso than any other wrestler. Sometimes the things that are over in wrestling, they're not for you, boys and girls. They're for someone else. And that's okay. Yep. That's what's great about wrestling. And I hope that there is a little Jey Uso fan that this becomes their seminal moment. He's their Shawn Michaels, and his boyhood dream comes true. And what better way to celebrate that than paintyourlife.com? I'm talking to you specifically with Mother's Day and Father's Day right around the corner. I want to put you up on game, as the kids say. If you're looking to give a meaningful gift, a personable gift, the best gift you could ever give to your mom and dad, look no further than Paint Your Life. And I really want you to think about this. What did you get mom and dad for Mother's Day or Father's Day last year? I bet you don't remember, and even worse, I know they don't remember. But you can give a truly memorable gift that they'll never forget at Paint Life. That's where you can get a hand-painted portrait to fit almost any budget, and it's a great idea for both mom and dad. You're going to be working with a professional artist. You choose the artist. You choose the medium. Like, hey, do you want this in oil or acrylic or watercolor or charcoal and more? They can even send it to you framed. So as soon as mom and dad open it, they're good to hang it on the wall. Now, what are you going to put there? Is it going to be a cherished loved one? Is it going to be your favorite vacation spot you went with mom and dad as a kid? Let me tell you something I'm doing this Father's Day for my cousin Derek. His mom and dad passed away. My aunt and uncle passed away before they got to meet their grandchild. So this year for Father's Day, I'm going to take the photo I have of my cousin Derek when he was a baby, and we're going to Photoshop in his kid. His mom and dad are going to meet his son for the first time. Man, I'm getting emotional just thinking about that. You think Derek's going to be touched? Do you think that's going to get hung on the wall? Do you think he'll ever forget it? That's what Paint Your Life does. They make this stuff meaningful and personable because it's really all about you. And you can combine photos, just like I said. Maybe you've got a favorite vacation and grandpa couldn't make it. Wouldn't it be cool if you gave that to grandma and grandpa's in the painting? They can combine photos. They just need you to upload a photo, and it can even be a photo off your phone of grandpa, and upload a photo of where you want them to be. Maybe grandma lost her dog this past year. Wouldn't she love to open that up on Mother's Day? Paint Your Life transforms your photos into one-of-a-kind, beautiful hand-painted portraits by professional artists, and you can give the most meaningful gift you've ever given at Paint Your Life. And there's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money's refunded, guaranteed. And right now is a limited time offer. Get 20% off your painting. That's right, 20% off and free shipping. Now, to get this special offer, just text the word WRESTLE to 87204. That's WRESTLE to 87204. Text WRESTLE to 87204. Paint your life. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. I'm a big fan of Paint Your Life, John. Have you done a paintyourlife.com yet? I think you'd dig it.
I think I'd love it. Yeah, it looks so cool. It looks really cool to do something for my mom. That'd be awesome.
I think she'd love it. I got one for the Nature Boy. He's got a photo of Megan and Ashley hanging in his penthouse in Tampa. Yeah. I've given one to my mother-in-law. She's got one of all the grandkids. My dad got a portrait of his mom. My mom got a portrait of her dad. Like, this is a home run. I go to it every chance I get. They'll never forget it. Go check it out. Shout out to Paint Your Life. Let's talk about some other WrestleMania matches that we've got this weekend. Of course, seemingly the main event of night one, it's the three-way dance. Paul Heyman is the monkey in the middle. It's Roman Reigns, it's Seth Rollins, and it's CM Punk. Talk about long-term storytelling. I've seen old clips from more than a dozen years ago where Paul Heyman is saying that one day he's going to walk down that aisle with CM Punk when he main events WrestleMania, and that's happening this Saturday. The real-life Phil Brooks boyhood dream is coming true, but will it be a nightmare as he faces 2/3 of the Shield, which, fun fact, he actually had a hand in getting on the main roster. Now, maybe it wouldn't have been Roman Reigns in that spot, but still, it's full circle for CM Punk this Saturday night. What do you expect when the final curtain drops Saturday?
Yeah. And this is one of the things I talk about with social media. You know, CM Punk and Seth Rollins, I have no idea if they really like each other or not. No idea. But they've been so good about being very consistent. And because of that, you believe it. So I know we're in this kind of tell-all world about this is Hollywood. But still, people want to know that people want to look at the Houdini milk cake crate and think, you know, he could actually die in there. I'm pretty sure it's a trick, but I'm not sure how it works. So some of this, you know, this is what I'm talking about, which creates really cool interest. I think there's great interest with this match with Seth and with CM Punk and with Roman, especially with Paul Heyman being in there. Look, these are three of the biggest pillars we've had in the last decade or more in WWE. I mean, this is a huge – you don't get much bigger than this. This is a huge match, and they're all fantastic. They're all still in the prime of their life. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
The Blue Meanie is still hanging out with us. Shout out to Meanie. And he says, my prediction is Paul sides with Seth.
You know what? Meanie, I love that. I love that because I thought the same thing when I was thinking about this today. I thought the same thing. If Paul Heyman leaves with Seth. You know, Paul went with who was it? He went out with somebody that came back with Brock, you know, everything. You know, it's kind of like the Don King thing. You know, went down to, I guess, Zaire with Foreman, came back with Ali. You know, so it's very similar, and I think it's fantastic. So, Meanie, yeah, I was thinking about the same thing today, that there's a chance that Paul Heyman sides with Seth, which nobody will expect. And what a unique matchup that would be.
I'm a little disappointed in the way the cookies crumbled for Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre. Wasn't that long ago. It felt like either one of these could have been in the main event of WrestleMania, but What a loaded roster. I want to say it in a loud and clear voice, and I know I'll ruffle some feathers and maybe even yours, John, but I would argue this is the most loaded this roster has ever been in WWE. So Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest are going to take their frustrations out on each other. I mean, we saw a three-way a while back with Gunther and Sheamus. And I mean, these guys were just beating the shit out of each other. That's kind of what I expect to see here. This is going to be a hard-hitting, old school, coming in with a chip on my shoulder. I'm going to prove you wrong. This could be another potential show stealer, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very physical. You know, Drew loves wrestling snug, stiff, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. It's, you know, he's a throwback to the days when guys really just enjoy beating the shit out of each other. And he enjoys it. I enjoy watching it. I'm glad I'm not in it, but I think it's going to be one of those matches. I think it's going to be a very, very physical match. And people are going to look at it and go, ooh, ooh, ooh. And that's what I think that they want. And I think this is in two incredible stars. And I think it's going to be a fun match to watch. As far as who wins, I don't know. I think I'd go with Drew because I think Drew, I think Drew's a great heel. But anyway, I don't know. I think it's a toss-up.
We got AJ Styles working with Logan Paul, one of the all-time greats in AJ Styles. And Logan Paul, man, it feels like he always answers the call on these big shows. He's going to be looking for a big viral moment. He's obviously going to have a great match. I don't think we've seen him stumble not once. This is going to be a spectacle. I'm sure there's going to be some crazy stuff that's all over social media. I think I'm looking forward to this more than maybe I should be. I think on paper, everyone looks and says, oh, well, AJ is one of the all-time greats. He'll eat him up. But Logan's got the size advantage, and obviously AJ has the experience. What do you think? Who do you see winning this one?
AJ, to me, when I was doing commentary, I called a lot of his matches when he first came in, and I said so much that he was our Shawn Michaels. And when you're quoting yourself as a source, you suck as a person because you can't quote yourself as a source. And I just did that. I just literally said, when I said this, like I'm a source, I can quote myself. A source can't quote itself. So I just did like the biggest mistake in journalism there. Not that I'm a journalist. I can barely read. But I think that much of AJ Styles. I also think that much of Logan. He is awesome. He is incredible. How in the world he has so few matches? I know they walk through it and they help him out with all this stuff, but he has incredible feel. He's a great athlete. You look at him out there on the mic. He's a great heel. He's great with the crowd. He is absolutely fantastic. I think this match is, I don't know if it's a sleeper, but I think it's going to be, they say these 5-star matches, which I don't know if either one of these guys are the internet darlings, so if they're going to get one or not, because I'm pretty sure that's all that comes down to, since Kurt Angle never got a 5-star match. But I think it's going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. AJ Styles can still do everything that he ever did, and Logan Paul is just, he's a freak athlete. And WrestleMania, with that many people, they are going to turn it out. Now, as far as who wins, well, I don't know. This is a toss-up to me. I have no idea. None. I think I'd give it with Logan Paul because I think the bragging rights to beat an all-time great he'd be able to get years off that. And so to me, I think it makes more sense to give it to Logan Paul.
I can't wait to see that match. And I'm really interested to see what they do with Randy Orton. Of course, they're saying that will be a night 2 match. I, for one, do hope it's Nick Aldis, but I'm curious if he's not going to become a full-time wrestler. And maybe that is the story. Maybe we transition him here and he's no longer just the GM. But I could also see them allowing him the opportunity to wrestle at WrestleMania, much like they did Jerry Lawler once before. And I realize it's a totally different circumstance and that Nick is still in the prime of his career. But if he somehow snuck a victory out of Randy Orton, and then Randy was pissed about it and punted him to high heaven or something afterwards, and then he started targeting different officials looking for his respect, and we made Randy just a bona fide mega heel, I could get behind that maybe. But if it is Nick Aldis, do you think Nick gets his hand raised, or is he just a speed bump for Randy Orton?
I don't see how he could. I mean, Randy Orton is, what, a 14-time world champion?
Yep.
And you want Randy to be there with in the title picture. Randy could be the one that ends up breaking Rick's record. If Cena doesn't break it first, he may end up tying Cena at the, who knows? I mean, Randy's that good. And so I don't know. I don't know how you'd beat Randy, a guy that's, 14-time world champion. And I know these, sometimes you make these titles, it makes them into something that they're not. Randy is all that.
Yes.
I used to always say, which I'm quoting myself again, it was just makes me into a total asshole. If you build a sports entertainer from the ground up, it'd be Randy Orton. And I meant that. That guy he is different level. I mean, just Bob Orton. Me and Bob Orton got drunk one night in Tokyo. Like 3:00 in the morning. We were on the above ground train. We couldn't find our hotel. We couldn't find the subway. We couldn't find ourselves. We were so dang drunk. And he looked over and goes, I got this kid. I think he's special. And I said, yeah, Bob, he is. Because Bob thought, he had that much talent then. I would say special in a good way, not in a bad way. And it turned out that he was talking about Randy. Randy's like 11 or 12 at the time. He's talking about how a great athlete he was and all that. Smart kid. He is. He's all that. So I don't know how you can beat him. I just, I know you could have him slip on a banana peel and it may not hurt him. Don't know. I mean, I think you got to put Randy over.
I could argue that Randy Orton should be the guy along with John Cena. I think you could argue Randy Orton should be the guy to retire John Cena and even break Rick's record because he started in WWE. He never left. He never jumped ship. He's been here the entire time. It feels like Randy Orton is a dyed-in-the-wool WWE guy for life. I could totally see him being that guy.
And, he was the one that when they, when guys leave the territory, they want to race the records. Brock was the youngest champion. And then when Brock went off to UFC, of course, they wanted to erase his record. They used Randy to do it. He became the youngest WWE champion. So that's a pretty cool story now. The youngest WWE champion and also the most, now one of the most tenured, but hold the title for the most times. I mean, that's a pretty cool story. I think I've always thought Randy might be the guy that ends up having it like 17 or 18 times. And I think it'd be great if he is.
Let's talk about the women's tag team match. We got Liv Morgan's team against Bayley's team. This is going to be a tough match to follow if they're following Randy Orton, I'm sure. But Bayley and Liv Morgan looking for another WrestleMania moment. Of course, Lyra and Raquel Rodriguez are going to be featured at WrestleMania, really for one of their first times. Bayley, at this point, probably the old pro when it comes to this sort of thing. I got to say, I'm pulling for Bayley on this one. What say you?
Oh my goodness! I remember when she was first came in. Me and Chris Chambers used to always talk about how we want to turn Bayley heel. Chris, he used to run the studios and it was such a great producer with running the network and stuff with Kevin Dunn and those guys. Chris is, I think, the one that came up with the scratch logo for WWE back in the day when we went to the Attitude Era. But a really talented guy. But we used to always joke about how we so badly want to turn Bayley heel when she was hugging everybody. She'd be this person, smoking cigarettes and turning like this absolute derelict. It was always we always thought she'd be a great heel. She's better than what we thought. I mean, Bayley is so freaking talented. She is so good at what she does. So yeah, this is great for Bayley. I'm a huge Bayley fan, and I can't wait to see her at WrestleMania.
We've got to run down the next match, and this is one that I think everybody's going to be talking about, but it does present challenges. So I want to ask a wrestler named John Layfield what he thinks about the Intercontinental title match. Braun Breaker, Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, and Penta. No doubt, 4 megastars. I mean, Dom is one of the hottest heels in the history of wrestling. Finn Balor has been so good for so long that it almost didn't matter what you did with him. It was going to work. I almost feel like at times he falls into that Dolph Ziggler category where he might actually be so good it's to his own detriment. And then you've got 2 guys who are hotter than donut grease, as JR might say. Braun Breaker, who just delivered the spear of the millennium. Of course, he is the offspring of the dog-faced gremlin, Rick Steiner. And then we've got Penta, the hottest new act in WWE. He debuted on the second night of the Netflix run, and everybody's been talking about him ever since. This feels like a prime time to anoint a new champion. A lot of people are looking at this and saying, you got to find a way for Penta to walk away with the winner here. But if you do that, does that mean that Braun moves up, or do you keep it on Braun and let him sustain? What would John do in this crazy 4-way? And because it's a 4-way, I mean, I've respectfully heard guys in the wrestling business say that 4-ways are a cluster F. Was that your experience with that as well?
Yeah, they're hard. They're definitely hard, and they can turn into a cluster F really fast. I think that's why people say they aren't always, but man, they can be tough because you got to watch what your partners are doing out there. There's a lot of moving parts that you've got to be careful. So you got to have tent poles in it where you know where you need to be, where there's always, if there's a like quadruple down, if that's a word, it's like double down to quadruple down, that you got to know when that's going to happen, about what time. And so you got certain things that can save you. And where guys get lost is they don't have tent poles. So you got to know, say at 6 minutes, we got to have everybody down. At 10 minutes, we got to have somebody get hit with something, and they're going to be out for 10 minutes or whatever that is. Where you get lost is you don't know where you are, and you lose those tent poles, and that's when things turn into an absolute disaster. I don't think it will with this, and especially with Finn Balor out there. I think, in my opinion, that's why you got Finn Balor out there. You put Finn Balor out there because he's going to be the general, and he's that good. And I agree with you about the Dolph analogy. He's so good that they know he can get anything over, and he gets put in some spots sometimes because he's so good. And that's kind of a disadvantage to guys that can really work like Finn, or a guy like Dolph that can really work, that they get put in stuff that a normal person wouldn't, because they know that they can make chicken soup out of chicken shit. And I think Finn is out there as a general, and he'll be a great leader in this. You watch him. I think he'll be directing traffic, in my opinion. It's funny, Connor, because we always go into a meeting like this, and you sit around with a group of like 4 or 5 people. There's an agent there. There's always somebody that speaks, and that's the guy that that pretty much everybody has the credibility of. I wasn't surprised. Was pleasantly surprised, I guess, when I went to meet a bunch of guys, and Seth Rollins was that guy. There's a lot of respect among the boys, and I knew he did. It wasn't surprising, that he was a smart guy, but man, he has a lot of respect among the boys. I think Finn's like that, and I think Finn's going to be the leader in this. As far as where you go with Braun, as far as if you take the title off of him, it depends on where you're going with him. I mean, if you got something for him to step up in right away, then yeah, you got to take the title off of him. But you probably don't. I don't know what they're doing with Cena, with Cody. I don't know what they're doing with Gunther, with Jay. There's only one place to go, and that's up for Braun because of the talent that he has. And if you don't have a spot for him right away, you're probably going to keep that title on him. But if you do have a spot for him to step up, and that all depends on storylines, that's the only way you take the title off of him. I think Penta is probably the odds-on favorite. I'd put it on Dominic. Not a doubt in my mind. I'd find a way for Dominic to win that thing. You beat 3 great guys like that, he would have so much heat with that Intercontinental title, and then not defend it, find a way to get out of matches. I think Dominic's such a great heel. If I'm booking, I got it on Dominic.
I love the way your heel brain works. I love that. Yeah, I could get behind that. Let's put it on Dom. I changed my opinion. I did like the story. It really came to a head of the Elimination Chamber for this next ladies match. It's Naomi versus Jade Cargill. This is going to be a big moment for Jade. I think this might be the first time we've had a women's singles match without a title on the line ever at WrestleMania. So they're going to make history. Of course, Jade Cargill is somebody who people have a lot of high hopes for and think she might be one of the future darlings of WWE. A look like no other. But of course, we know Naomi has been the champ for off and on over 10 years. What do you expect here with Naomi and Jade?
Yeah, I expect a coronation of Jade is what I expect. She's got this an incredible look, and that's a big part of this business is the look. And she has this look that you can't replicate. And Naomi is such a fantastic talent. I don't think it hurts her to lose. What I'm doing is looking at this like I would look at it if I'm booking it. And if I'm booking it, I think Naomi doesn't hurt her to lose. We got a chance to do something with the new person in Jade. I put Jade over and then see what we can do with her. And I don't think, this is such a prestigious spot that you've got 2 ladies there, like as you mentioned. They got history there because they're not in a title match, they're in a singles match. That's pretty cool. And I think people are going to be talking about it. And so I think because of that, the winner and loser in this doesn't matter as much. And so to me, I think you try something with Jade here.
We got to talk about the Women's World Championship. It's a three-way dance with arguably the biggest star on the ladies' side of WWE, Rhea Ripley. She's in there with Io Sky and Bianca Belair. You know, when it all comes down to it in this three-way dance, I think the betting favorite would probably be on Rhea Ripley, but I don't know necessarily that that's the creative. I mean, it feels like her star is the brightest right now, but you could also use that as an opportunity to help, quote unquote, make someone else. We've seen Bianca Belair have some show stealing moments before. Is this weekend Io Sky's chance? What say you?
I think it all depends, on where WWE's running, and I believe that Rhea. Look, you say she's the biggest name in WWE, and I agree. She's selling all the merch, and from when you talk to people, I mean, she's the one that sells tickets. Not that Bianca isn't; she is an incredibly popular star, and I was there when she headlined the first two black women to headline WrestleMania, which I thought was incredible, and I thought she did a wonderful job, and she consistently has. She made history. That's cool. That's cool that she did that. Io Sky, I don't know. I mean, if we're running a pay-per-view next week, next month in Japan, I think there's a good chance of it. Say, well, is that a slight on her? No, it's not a slight on her. If we had a Brit there, we're running a pay-per-view in England the next month. He pretty much knows who's going to win, or at least we're going to get heat on him and going to get it back in the UK. I don't know. I think it all depends on who's a draw. And I think Rhea is the one that, I just saw a clip of her at some UFC thing that went viral. I mean, she's hitting on all cylinders right now. Something with her has just absolutely connected. And when that happens, I think you got to pour gasoline on it. I mean, I don't think you can take it for granted and go, well, she's over. We don't need the title on her. There's a point with that with a lot of talent. But I think at a point when you get hot, sometimes you got to pour gasoline on people. And I think that's what you need to do with Rhea here.
As a reminder, of course, the Monday after WrestleMania is in Las Vegas, but SmackDown is in Fort Worth, Raw is in Kansas City, and then Des Moines, Iowa, and then Nebraska, and then Dayton, Ohio, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. The beat goes on. If I was a betting man, I would say Io retains, but I do think that you're not hurting Rhea by not having her win, but I'd be hanging my hat on Rhea. I do think that Rhea winds up main eventing a WrestleMania on night 2 eventually. I think she's got that sort of ceiling in WWE. But what is going to go on last on night 2 this year at WrestleMania is the former face that runs the place, John Cena, coming back on his farewell tour with, as Bruce would call it, a fresh paint of coat. We're now seeing the darker side of John Cena. He's no longer doing it for the fans. And he's going to be challenging the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. Cody has just passed the 1-year mark with the title. And, of course, just finishing the story meant winning the belt. But now he's maintained it for more than a year. I think this will be the 4th time that Cody has been in the main event, if you're counting night 1s. So he's racking up these main events. What do you expect? Will we see Travis Scott? Will we see The Rock? Will some glass break? Will somebody get a mud hole stomped in them and said person walk it dry? What do you expect?
I hope we see all of that. I don't think there's any doubt we'll see The Rock. I say any doubt. I have no idea. I don't know any creative whatsoever. So this is all just me guessing. But there's got to be some bells and whistles on this. Not because these guys need it, but because it's there. This is WrestleMania, the second night. You've got all these incredible, tens of thousands of people have watched this show. This is the last one. They could do this by themselves. I remember watching Cena one time, and he specifically in some title match, I was doing commentary, never got outside the ring. Everybody else in the show had done all this stuff. He just wanted to show that he could do a wrestling match, and no one even noticed it. When we got done, I got back there. I said, "Never get out of the ring, did you?" He said, "Nope." He said, "That was wrestling." And so he and Cody could do this without the bells and whistles. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's going to be fun to have the bells and whistles. I would love to hear the glass break. I hope it happens. I have no idea if it's going to happen or not. I think there's going to be some crazy stuff happen in this match, and I can't wait to see it.
I want to remind everybody that coming into this, John Cena, when it comes to WrestleMania, has 10 wins and 6 losses. He's won 6 titles at WrestleMania. He successfully defended his title twice at WrestleMania. So he's looking to win his 7th title at WrestleMania. And again, his record is 10-6. Meanwhile, Cody Rhodes comes in, having been involved in 8 different matches at WrestleMania, and he has a record of 3-8. 3 wins, but 8 losses at WrestleMania. So if wrestling was real and it was a traditional sport, that would be something that fans would lean into in a major way. And I know that you consider yourself like a half-ass handicapper, so I wanted to give you some other data that you may not have even thought about in a while. But in doing some show prep for today's show, I took a look at your WrestleMania record, and someone on Reddit had already done the hard work for me. Let's take a look here. Yeah, 3-8 at WrestleMania. You have the exact same record as Cody Rhodes, John. You're in good company.
I'm in great company. 8 people beat me? Ain't no freaking way 8 people beat me. That's bullshit.
I don't even believe it.
I demand a recount.
I do think this is pretty hilarious, though, that you're at WrestleMania 13 and lose, 14 and lose, 15 and lose, 16 and lose. But everybody loves WrestleMania 17, and so do you. You pick up the win. But back to losing at 18. We missed 19. We're on 20 and lose. We lose at 21. But by God, when 22 rolls around, JBL's time is here. He wins. He wins again at 24. And then sadly, he loses at 25 and says, okay, that's enough. I give. Of all your WrestleMania moments, obviously your first one was a big deal, just because you're finally on the show. And you mentioned when you main evented against Cena, obviously you didn't get your hand raised, but goodness gracious, you're in the main event. You're working for the world title. It's a special moment. Are those the 2 highlight WrestleManias, or is there another WrestleMania moment that maybe we didn't hear about, but it was personal to you and you would like to share?
Yeah, the 2 in Texas. I got to wrestle in the Astrodome. I remember when Evil Knievel said he was going to jump it, which I don't know if he was ever serious about it or not. Of course, he tried to jump the Grand Canyon, so he probably was serious because he's crazy. But I remember being there in freaking the Astrodome thinking, oh, my God, I grew up watching Run, Earl, Run and Love You Blue. And then I got to be in the Astrodome, and that's when weekends, it had so many people there from Texas history. It was just awesome. And my last WrestleMania, even though it was 23 seconds or 21 seconds, whatever it was, the Von Erichs went in the Hall of Fame, and I got to go out in Texas. I got to go out in right near my home and in front of 70-something thousand people or 60,000, whatever it was. So those were really cool to me to be able to be there and be in Texas in these huge arenas. And that especially the Astrodome, because I grew up watching people in the Astrodome. I remember Nolan Ryan and J.R. Richards pitching in the Astrodome. I remember Bodacious bucking people off, Tough Heatman and the boys in the Astrodome. So it was really cool to be there for that. And Triple H, I think, has a losing record too. They're it's funny because especially when you're a heel and you can work, not that I could work, but Triple H can, you get beat a lot. And that's Cody's problem. People don't remember it. People look at like Triple H and he had a losing record because he could work and it didn't hurt him. Most people would just get crushed by that. And that's Cody. Cody can work. And because of that, a lot of times you lose in big matches because they know you can get over it.
I absolutely love your WrestleMania record because first of all, it's the exact same as Cody Rhodes. But I mean, if we can get Silva to throw it back up there, I want you to take a look at something I put together when I was doing research. What an opportunity it was. As I've heard the story, on the way to WrestleMania 18 is when Michael Hayes pointed out, perhaps correctly, hey, did you realize that The Undertaker has never lost at WrestleMania? So that's the first time they started talking about the streak, and The Undertaker, after he beat Ric Flair at 18, holds up 10 fingers like, oh, I'm 10-0. But had you not messed around and slipped on a banana peel and picked up a win at WrestleMania 17, do you realize you had a chance by WrestleMania 22 to have the bizarro Undertaker streak going? You could have had a damn near perfect WrestleMania streak had you not messed up and won at WrestleMania 17. You could have had the absolute opposite of what The Undertaker had. What a WrestleMania streak. What a missed opportunity, John.
When is Bruce coming back?
That's what everybody in the chat wants to know too.
Yeah, I'm not a Chicago White Sox of the freaking WrestleMania.
I think it's hilarious because I don't know if you ever had a chance to listen to Mick Foley's podcast, but he called himself Mr. In Your House. And he said, nobody came through more when it mattered less than Mick Foley. And I just thought, what a great way to market that. And we've established that you're sort of Mr. Judgment Day. That's your pay-per-view. Maybe not WrestleMania. We're hoping that Cody can beat your record this weekend and he goes 4-8.
Hey, well, the reason was WrestleMania 17 was in Texas.
Yeah, you had
that's
to win
when I was out there with Godfather and those guys, and that's the reason they put me over, because we were in Texas. It had nothing to do with talent. It just, hey, let's give the hometown kid a little rub here, and because the match didn't matter.
Well, the matches do matter this weekend. Everybody's going to be looking forward to WrestleMania. We're going to be.
So, what's your call on Cena and Cody?
I mean, listen, I think to me, you got to put it on John Cena. You got to take it off Cody Rhodes. There's been lots of speculation and lots of rumor and innuendo that Cody's not even in the marketing and advertising after WrestleMania, but John Cena is. Now, maybe that's a false flag operation because they know people like us are going to talk about that. But what I do think is cool is this is one of those main events where I could see it working either way. And I was really emotionally invested in last year. I wanted Cody to win, but I do think there is a contingent out there who like the idea that we're seeing a heel John Cena maybe for the first time. So why not elevate him to there? And well, you can always have Cody get his rematch down the line. I think that's what I'd prefer, but honestly, I think there's a million different ways to get there. So we'll see, as they say.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you've got so much equity you're putting into John Cena here. I mean, there's so much you can do. I mean, this is the biggest heel turn since Hogan. And, you can argue, that it might be even bigger because of the crowds. And so I think that you got so much you can do with Cena, with The Rock. If there is a third member, I mean, there's, God almighty, man, this is hard to pass up. And now Cody is chasing. I think that's wonderful to have Cody chasing.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't want your babyface to have the title all the time. Sometimes you want that babyface to try to chase, the evil establishment. And if you can imagine if you have Cena and The Rock as part of that evil establishment, that's a heck of a hill for Cody to have to climb. I think you can do some fantastic stuff with that if John ends up getting the title.
Well, we're looking forward to what happens this weekend. We hope you guys will check out WrestleMania. Before we get going, I want to hit a few more questions. We'll try to do these rapid fire. Michael wants to know, what was your favorite WrestleMania city? For me, it was Toronto or NYC. John, did you have a favorite WrestleMania city? You think, man, more WrestleManias there. Sign me up.
I thought Dallas was cool. I say Dallas is Arlington. We had 100-something thousand people there, and that was cool to be in Arlington Stadium. And so it was really cool to be in a building. And because I grew up a Cowboy fan, so to be in the Cowboy Stadium, even though that wasn't the original Cowboy Stadium, which I got to play in high school, by the way, a high school playoff game. But it was unbelievable to be in the locker room when you're a high school kid from Sweetwater, Texas, playing in the Dallas Cowboy Stadium. But being in the Cowboy Stadium, even as a grown man, and then that's not the stadium that had Tom Landry and Staubach in it. I understand all that. I don't care. It's still the Cowboy Stadium, and I'm a huge fan. So that was a lot of fun to be there.
My pick is probably New Orleans. I'm glad they're going next year. It feels like it's an easy town to walk around in. There's lots of cool bars and restaurants. It's easy to get around. It's just got a cool vibe to it. So I'm looking forward to next year with New Orleans. Dominic D says, what match do you think is going to steal the show? You said before we got going that you felt like, hey, it's going to be a night one opportunity to steal the show. Do you still stand by that? And you think that it's going to be Jey Uso and Gunther stealing the show? Or now that we've walked through it, do you think it's something else?
I think it could be Jey and Gunther to steal the show. I also think it could be AJ Styles and Logan Paul that could steal the show. It's hard to steal the show as the main event because they expect you to steal the show. And if you steal the show, you're not really stealing the show. You're supposed to close the show. So nothing to diminish the guys in the main event. I think they're going to be fantastic. But it's hard to steal a show when you're the main event because that's expected of you. You're not really stealing anything. You're doing something, you're living up to very high expectations. So those two matches to me, I think are the ones that could potentially steal the show.
Guy W. Johns is with us here, and he wants to know if JBL versus Conrad the Mortgage Man Thompson were to happen at WrestleMania, what would the build-up be? Who's going over, and whose corner is Brother Love in? Well, I would have, before we broke down the description and the record, I would have said JBL clobbers me. But given his history I would hope I could get him to slip on a banana peel. Maybe I can bribe Brother Love and have him turn on John. I mean, listen, we know I'm getting a clothesline from hell. The question is, can I get up and will Bruce throw me the gimmick just in time to hit you with the old sneakeroo?
Yeah, I didn't realize my record was so bad, so I probably bet against myself, and because I'm really not very good, I especially at WrestleMania. And Brother Love will be in whose ever corner has better catering. Pretty much is all it boils down to. So, Conrad, being the very hospitable host from Alabama, would probably have better catering than me, being from just Texas and having, barbecue and some things. So I think Brother Love would be with Conrad.
Well, you can look and tell I'd have the better catering. Hey, what was the best catering of WrestleMania? Like, I've seen some WrestleMania catering and it's been crazy. Like, I've been to WWE catering before at just television or pay-per-view, but at WrestleMania, I think my first one was in New Orleans 11 years ago. There were steaks and lobster and crab legs and shrimp. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not regular catering. Is there one particular WrestleMania catering where you were like, holy shit, this is not what I expected?
That one in New Orleans was fantastic. It was shocking. It was so good because we've always gone through cycles of, catering sucks. Okay, we're going to make it better. And all of a sudden you show up and catering's fantastic. Got all these different things. Then all of a sudden they have either a budget cut or they change caterers. Then it starts sucking again. So there's always – catering is very cyclical. And so when it gets really good, you got to watch out because something's going to happen. It's going to get bad again. And once it gets bad enough, people complain, it'll get really good again. So it's very cyclical. You just got to catch it at the top of the cycle.
Best WrestleMania after party moment. Do you have a WrestleMania?
Oh, yeah, dancing with Booker T. Yeah, I got dry humped by the fridge with William Perry. Not real proud of that, but I did. True story. And you didn't expect that today. You didn't expect me to admit to being dry humped by William Perry, did you?
No.
We were in the WrestleMania party, and something happened me and Booker challenged each other. I challenged Booker. He didn't challenge me. He's not as silly as I am, to a dance off. And so me and my wife challenged Booker and Charmel to a dance off. And so Charmel's, of course, the only one that can really dance out of all four of us. But we had a dance off, and then William Perry gets out there and somehow pulls his hat off. He's like humping me for some reason. I'm not sure why. But he's the fridge, so it's okay. And my wife did like the worm across the ground. The whole party shut down. And you could see Linda and Vince standing on chairs watching. Until we called for Vince to come out there, then they both disappeared because they didn't want to get out there. But Charmel was so disgusted with the whole thing that she was the only one, the professional, the one that could dance was the only one that didn't dance. Booker was popping and locking and doing all this stuff. I didn't think it was that good. I thought I was better than him because I was doing like this breakdancing stuff. He said I did the same move over and over and over, so he feels the same way about mine. But anyway, I think we ended up in a draw. But that was the highlight of the whole WrestleMania party. We had the whole dance floor to ourselves.
Just so I'm clear, and I know that John just casually throws out there, and my wife did the worm. We're talking about the czar of finance is doing the worm on the dance floor.
She was just on the cover of Fortune magazine at this time, so she's like one of the most. She was listed as one of the 100 most important people in the world, and she was doing the worm at a WrestleMania party across the dance floor. Yeah, she got down and did the worm, and she did some other breakdance move. And I love my wife, but it wasn't that good. It really was. It was not great.
I think you might actually be a bad influence on people when you've got people on the cover of Fortune magazine doing the worm. My God.
True, and we almost got Vince out there, and when he saw that we were trying to get him out there, he left his own party.
All right. So
and then I ended up dancing with William Perry, the fridge. And I'm not sure how that happened, but I do know what happened.
I was going to ask your most interesting celebrity interaction at WrestleMania, but I think I got it. The consensual, non-consensual with Refrigerator Perry. Maybe that's
correct. Right. Correct. I danced with William Perry. I did.
Well, we're all going to be doing the WrestleMania dance this weekend, and we'll be breaking it down next week here on the program. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications bell at somethingtowrestle.com, and we'll be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And before you know it, we're going to be talking all things Vader. That's right. It's going to be Vader time with JBL soon, right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.